Okay, so we just finished comparing our own hand calculations of A to P, P to A, F to A, et cetera, future and present value versus annuities. I just want to share this video with you. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but there are a few key points that are just really critical to understanding the economy. Because I've been working on this for a while, and just in my own kind of mechanical way. And what I like about it, one thing I like most about it,
how the economic machine works in 30 minutes. The economy works like a simple machine, but many people don't understand it, or they don't agree on how it works, and this has led to a lot of needless economic suffering. I feel a deep sense of responsibility to share my simple but practical economic template. Though it's unconventional, it has helped me to anticipate and to sidestep the global financial crisis, and it has worked well for me for over 30 years. Let's begin. Though the economy might seem complex, it works in a simple mechanical way. It's made up of a few simple parts and a lot of simple transactions that are repeated over and over again a zillion times. These transactions are above all else driven by human nature, and they create three main forces that drive the economy. Number one, productivity growth. Number two, the short-term debt cycle. And number three, the long-term debt cycle. We'll look at these three forces and how laying them on top of each other creates a good template for tracking economic movements and figuring out what's happening now. Let's start with the simplest part of the economy.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause that for a second. And what he's actually doing there is he's adding those three curves together. So the first one, growth, says, I'm going to start a farm or a steel factory or a bakery or whatever. And in order to stay in business, I kind of have to grow. I mean, I can't shrink. If I start shrinking, then I'm not worthwhile, and just why bother? So that's part of it. And then the big curve that he showed is like a big recession or depression, and then the little wiggles are basically short-term loans that go back and forth. So every one of those little curves is a miniature P and F, present value, future value. So that's
transactions. An economy is simply the sum of the transactions that make it up. And a transaction is a very simple thing. You make transactions all the time. Every time you buy something, you create a transaction. Each transaction consists of a buyer exchanging money or credit with a seller for goods, services, or financial assets.
Okay, so one more pause there. This thing right here, money versus credit, becomes pretty complicated in a second, but what he shows is that there's about 25 times more credit in the U.S. economy than there is money. It's 25 times more credit. And that's how these things are built. Now, in the case of this course, 214, we don't talk about that much, but there's this new thing out there called the carbon credit. And there are companies that actually want it because they see the value of the carbon credit increasing over time at a rate greater than actual money. In the same way that, I'm going to go and buy some stocks right now because that value is going to increase over time, et cetera, et cetera. So in the economy that we're building in this course, we're saying I expect the cost of energy to keep going like this, so I would rather go ahead and just buy my renewables here and stay below that curve in the future. That's the whole point here. Yeah.
Credit spends just like money, so adding together the money spent and the amount of credit spent, they can't afford, like a house or a car, or they want to invest in something like starting a business. Credit can help both lenders and borrowers get what they want. Borrowers promise to repay the amount they borrow, called principal, plus an additional amount, called interest. When interest rates are high, there is less borrowing because it's expensive. When interest rates are low, borrowing increases because it's cheaper. When borrowers promise to repay and lenders believe them, credit is created. Any two people can agree to create credit out of thin air. That seems simple enough, but credit is tricky because it has...
Okay, so the point there that he's making is that the bank is going to want more money in the future. And then the final point I want to make in this video is that you've got the central bank sitting here, you've got the borrower sitting over here, or I guess over here, and then you've got productivity at the bottom. And that's the productivity is what I want to focus on. As it turns out, there's those three little gears. There's the bank, the borrower, and the productivity. And that little tripod is what drives this whole model. So I'll skip forward to that because there's a lot of really cool info in this, but I don't want to just sit here and watch the video the whole time.
Different names. As soon as credit is created, it immediately turns into debt. Debt is both an asset to
Okay, this part is critical too.
earn, and that accumulated knowledge raises our living standards. We call this productivity growth. Those who are inventive and hardworking raise their productivity and their living standards faster than those who are complacent and lazy. But that isn't necessarily true over the short run. Productivity matters most in the long run, but credit matters most in the short run. This is because productivity growth doesn't fluctuate much, so it's not a big driver of economic swings. Debt is, because it allows us to consume more than we produce when we acquire it, and it forces us to consume less than we produce when we have.
Okay, so in that case, what's production? Well, production is more cars, more solar panels, more batteries, just more capacity. It could also be viewed as better efficiency, because maybe you say, gosh, I've just produced a house that does not consume as much energy or electricity, which is also productivity. So that's the productivity. So productivity is the third leg. So remember, you had the bank, the borrower, and the productivity. So now we've kind of seen what that is. And what I liked about it is like this perpetual motion thing where I'll make it and then I'll buy it for myself. I'll just stay on this treadmill. So, okay, and then there's one more little graphic I want to show, and then we'll get back to the course.